In a previous video, I introduced the idea of data envelope analysis. In general, the basic principles, and what I'm going to do this video, is to apply data envelope analysis to the performance of universities. Again, it's going to be simple. It's only going to be in 2 dimensions, and so what I'm going to do is draw on a paper that I published in 2005. So the data is fairly old now, and some things have changed since I did this paper, since I wrote this paper, but let's take that as the starting point. And what I did in that paper was to take the performance of universities and put a measure of research output per staff member, per teacher. And a measure of teaching output per teacher. Now, so I'm saying that research outputs can be measured. I mean, number of publications or quality of publications or some sort of weighted number of publications, something like that might be used as a research output. Something like number of student graduates or student satisfaction with class sizes, some measure of teaching output could be, and I didn't invent the measures myself. In this particular case, I went to a national newspaper league table and I used their data. And I used their data, but used it differently from the way they used it and the way that normally they use their data for constructing league tables. So in national newspaper league tables, the Times Higher Education Supplement league tables was the ones I actually used for my study of the UK. They have a measure of the number of teaching staff, they have measures of library resources, measures of research outputs, research quality, measures of teaching outputs, teaching quality. All of those data, I wasn't asking questions about the data. I was simply taking the figures that I've got. Now, I treated staff as an input. That means I was treating it differently from the way league tables normally do it. What happens with league tables is they normally take a number of indicators: staff, research, student numbers, campus quality, library quality, a number of things, and simply weight them and add them together. They treat all of the variables in the same way. They allocate a weight to something and then they score whatever it is. Rank can range from the number of Nobel Prize winners who've graduated from the university through to the number of library books or the amount of money spent on resources. So there can be any number of measures of input and numbers of output. And I simply took the staff as an input and the research quality as an output, and simply staff as an input and teaching quality as an output. And I plotted all of the universities in the UK on that plotted all the universities in the UK on that graph, and that's the first step. There's every university that was appearing in national newspaper league tables was appearing on that graph. And then data envelope analysis, an envelope around the outside is drawn, and it's possible then to say that the closer an institution is to the boundary, it's producing more of either research or teaching outputs, depending on which boundary it's closer to. It's producing more of, or more of a mixture of research and teaching outputs the closer it gets to that boundary. The institutions that form that boundary represent kind of best performing examples we've got in front of us that might be emulated by other institutions. So now what I'm going to do is go back to that paper, 2005, and put that picture here so that you can see the data that I've got, and you'll be able to see a number of features of this institutional arrangements. I think you can see fairly clearly there's a group of universities following this line here that is fundamentally teaching universities. They are the former polytechnics. There's the University of Middlesex is out here as an example of producing a lot of teaching. University of Glamorgan, where I was teaching, was another teaching intensive university. The universities that are research intensive follow a different trend. They follow this line here, and they appear to be tending towards, they have to do teaching, of course they do teaching. I'm not trying to tell you that they only do research, but they have more resources to put into research, and so they tend in this direction. And somewhere in between them you might find institutions which are either successfully or not successfully trying to move from teaching intensity towards research intensity. So the performance here is being described by the position of the institution on this space. And what may surprise you is that those exemplar institutions around the outside are not the institutions that come at the top of the league table. The institutions, the standard league tables of national newspapers or international journals, the Oxford and Cambridge are very fine universities, but they're somewhere here in the middle. They're good at producing teaching, they're good at producing research. I'm not denigrating them in any way, but they're not as effective at converting resources into outputs as some of the other institutions which are on the boundary. In 2005 or 2004, where the data came for this study, the University of the Arts in London was right here on the boundary. University of Lancaster was right on the boundary. University of Wales College Newport right on the boundary. Institutions that were not super wealthy, but were actually very good at converting what they had into outputs, were at the boundary. As I say, Oxford and Cambridge, expensive institutions to run, in part because they have old buildings. I mean, I think that University of Oxford and University of Cambridge have beautiful buildings. They're part of our national heritage. They deserve to be kept up. The government needs to subsidise the support of those buildings. No question. I simply don't think that the money they get for maintaining their buildings should put them at the top of the university league table. We need to keep in perspective exactly what makes a good university, and it's not just about the building and the upkeep of the buildings. So now that we've got this way of looking at performance, we can now draw our own league tables which says that the institutions along the boundaries are going to get a score of 100, and every other institution is going to get a score of less than 100 by virtue of it being not on the boundary, and but the closer it is to the boundary, if it's close to the boundary, it will score 80, 90. If it's not close to the boundary, it will score 50. The performance will be measured by how close it is to the boundary. And what you get if you draw that league table, now we draw a league table in a different way. We draw the league table in terms of the DEA score rather than in terms of the inputs and outputs that the Times originally measured in making their own league table. You get a very different league table. And that's the first thing, is to note that the data envelope analysis gives you a very different pattern. It should make one think about what counts as an effective institution in producing good results for the resources that it gets. But data envelope analysis does more than that. It allows us to fiddle with the results and see what it would take. What does it take to create a league table in data envelope analysis that would be the same as the league tables that we see in newspapers. National newspapers, The Guardian, The Times, QS, various different league tables, but they always tend to look similar. There's slight differences between them, but very often UK universities, Oxford and Cambridge are at the top, Russell Group research institutions come next, and then polytechnics and teaching institutions. What would it take to produce that league table as a result of a DEA analysis? In data envelope analysis, very typically you get one really good research institution. In this particular case it was the University of Lancaster. One really good teaching intensive university, in this case it was Middlesex University or the University of the Arts, somewhere over here. And then you get a number of universities that are adequate at producing a mixture, or excellent at producing a mixture of the two. And I've done this analysis in several different countries, and the data envelope analysis, for reasons you'll understand, normally the universities that do very well on the league tables in terms of research will be somewhere up near this boundary, and there'll be a university, in the case of Canada for example, it was Guelph. Guelph is a teaching-focused university, teaching-focused institution, and it's right here at the boundary pushing the teaching outputs. But who's ever seen Guelph at the top of anybody else's league tables? Nobody. So what do you have to do to data envelope analysis in order to get a league table that puts Oxford and Cambridge at the top, Harvard and Stanford universities at the top, University of Ontario at the top, and British Columbia? What kind of league table analysis would put that, what kind of data envelope analysis would put those universities at the top? And the answer is very simple. And it is this: you treat everything as an output and you ignore the inputs. And if you do that, then you get a league table that is just like the ones that most newspapers publish. That's to say, if you wanted to turn that into policy terms, how do you produce a top-ranking university? The answer is you throw money at it. You don't worry about the inputs. You give it whatever inputs it wants, and you simply concentrate on getting the outputs at any cost. And that's my advice to institutions that are trying to promote themselves as world-class universities, is that's simple. Throw money Any government that wants a world-class university, just throw money at it. Enough money to attract the best professors, enough money to attract the best students, enough money to provide the best facilities, and that's how you get a world-class university. So the data envelope analysis appeals to me because it makes the comparison transparent. It treats inputs and outputs separately and differently. And it allows us then to manipulate the analysis in order to see what it is about our present league tables that stands out as brings those particular institutions that are always at the top. Why are they always at the top in those traditional league tables? So there's a number of reasons that this attracts me. There are further complications that you start to think about once you start using data envelope analysis. Not everybody agrees over what's an input and what's an output. Not everybody thinks that students with high qualifications is an input. They might think, I mean, a class full of people who are well qualified, that's an outcome, that's a quality measure, an outcome. The university is able to attract a lot of people with very good qualifications. It improves the quality of the classroom experience. That's an output. Or they might say, I've come to this university, I've worked very hard for my grades, I've got these good grades, that's me making an input into the university process. So depending on where you stand, you might see different things as inputs or outputs. It's quite possible that one person's league table will be quite different from another. I'd quite like to be able to see each person to be able to put in and manipulate the inputs and outputs to show what their personal values make of a league table. Because once you do this, you see that it's very value dependent. It depends on what you count as an input, what you count as an output. And that can shape what the league tables look like. And it's very strange in a way that all the league tables look very similar with the same institutions at the top every time. But it's also understandable in different terms that if you produce a league table such as I have, if you produce a league table where the University of the Arts and Lancaster University at the top, everyone will look at it and say, well, that's not my understanding of the ranking of universities in the UK. Well, no, it isn't. But don't just stop at that point. Ask, why isn't it? Why is it not? Why is it that we have a sense that there's very definitely a hierarchy and it's not the way data envelope analysis demonstrates it? So that's data envelope analysis of university performance and league tables.